what is content marketing all about? Can it actually be effective to grow an expert business in 2023?
If you want an algorithm to really get excited, start responding and show that you actually care about the viewers.
We're going to break down 7 various benefits to content marketing.
Content marketing nowadays, they actually understand the organic game.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 1 of the podcast. I'm Derrick Minyard.
I'm Jake Bryan.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm ready to get this show rocking and rolling. We've been talking about doing this for a while. We wanted to start sharing our vision with the world in terms of what content should look like now, what it's going to look like in the future.
Yep.
So honestly, I'm ready to get this podcast rolling, man.
Same here, man. And I think there's really the purpose of today's episode is let's just go wide. Let's go wide for a second and define. So what is content marketing all about? And can it actually be effective to grow an expert business in 2023?
Dude, that's such a good question, and I think that there's so many different ways that you can approach it. A lot of people tend to approach content marketing as strictly just like advertisements, right?
Yeah.
We think of like media buying, we think of ads, and that's actually probably the fastest way to make money. Like straight off the bat is content marketing being advertisements, buy an ad. That's how you make money for your business, right? And that's great. But we both worked in businesses, and we've seen it many times where a lot of times people build their entire company's content marketing around just the advertisements. And what's really interesting is that content marketing nowadays is actually the people who are in organic and they actually understand the organic game.
Yep.
They're getting more views. They're getting way more reach, more followers, more loyalty. And it's easier for people to sell things because they have organic reach.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And so let's talk about that. What is organic content marketing? So I know the advertising side you were saying that's very quick and you can turn it on or off very quickly with a lever, and it requires content to feed that pipeline, right? But us in this conversation, we're talking about organic content marketing. So everything that is not paid attention, right? Things that you can put out on channels for free, that channels like social media, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, email list, that's huge. A blog on your website, things that you can do as a creator, as an entrepreneur, to provide value and share that value with your customer base, with your online audiences, without having to pay for it via an advertisement fee, right? So that's content marketing as we're going to define it in this podcast and moving forward. Any other thoughts on content marketing? What else you would define it as?
I would define it as like your moat. It's the thing that protects you. A good friend of ours, Taylor, he describes content as a moat. It's the thing that keeps you sustainable in the long term.
Yeah.
If you look at any of the greats, their greatest legacy is actually the books that they wrote.
Yep.
We read books that are 300 years old. You can pay for a book to get shown in one place at one time, but once you sell the book and you keep it and it stays around, organic marketing is one of the things that stays around the longest. It's actually your legacy.
Right. It's
the thing that doesn't always benefit you in the first 5 years or the first 10 years. It's can your content actually, if your content can outlast you, that's more of like a legacy way of looking at content marketing. So it's more of your moat of protection for long-term growth, pivotability, like profitability, all across the board.
Absolutely. And that really ties into one of the benefits. So today we're going to actually also break down 7 various benefits to content marketing and how they benefit your business long term. That's kind of hinting into one of them. So I'm super excited. You guys will definitely want to listen in to catch all 7. So we're going to talk what's content marketing. We're going to dive into a couple case studies here in a minute as to who we've seen this work well for, how it works to grow their business. Everyone's a little bit different. And then we're going to hit the 7 benefits. So you guys want to stick around to the end. So who's the first guy we want to talk about that's used content marketing? We know and we hear him a lot.
Oh man, there's so many that we could talk about. One of my favorites though is because I feel like, it's easy when somebody already has a platform and they're like, well, you just took somebody who already had a platform and they already did this and you kind of cheated your way. I want to start with somebody who didn't really have a platform.
Okay.
They only had a couple thousand followers and legit were only getting 300 views per video.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, they had 2 million. Person's name is Keith Yackey.
Ooh.
Keith Yackey is a good friend of mine who started the company in the movement, in my opinion, called Married Game.
Okay.
Helping his thing or his motto slogan is helping men get their wives to want to have sex with them again. And he was creating content, doing lives and doing all
that catches attention, by the way.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And he was just making like normal videos, like selfie style videos constantly every day, posting on TikTok. He was very very intentional with his content, but he was doing it and he did it daily. So he was consistent too.
Okay.
But I ran into him at an event. I ended up shooting a couple videos and we posted some stuff on social media and we just clipped it up in a more sexy way for social media, pun intended. And I'm not kidding. The very first video we made, 2 million views in 4 days.
Wow.
4 days. Now
and you were the one helping him film it, edit it, release it.
Personally filmed it, personally edited it, gave the hashtags. He puts it out. It goes on TikTok, 2 million views. And we kind of gamed the algorithm after the first 500,000 views. But I basically called him and I was like, hey, have you looked at your TikTok? And he's like, no. I'm like, you've gained 10,000 followers in the past 24 hours. He's like, what? He goes and checks his calendar and texts me 3 hours later. He's like, hey, I'm booked out on calls for 2 weeks.
Yes.
He's like, we need to stop getting so many views. He's like, I can't take all these calls. He's like, I barely have time with my family. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Wait list, put him on a wait list.
Right. And so we did that with Keith. And then I was like, well, we did it once. Can you actually do it again? So I codified a couple things of virality, took a similar clip, put it out, and it did 600,000 views in the next couple of days.
What was the main message of that particular viral video, and what are some of the factors? We're kind of veering off a little bit. What do you think kind of attributed to that growth?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. The first was the hook right off the bat was it was basically men are the problem in their relationship. I don't remember the video perfectly correctly. Basically, it was just calling and putting all the blame back on men.
Which I agree with, actually.
Totally.
But it also is it resonates super strongly with the men who are like, I'm willing to step up to this challenge and tell me more.
Yeah, so it was very polarizing, very controversial, right off the bat.
Right.
Pissed off a lot of people. People were very angry, right off the bat. They're like, it's not my fault. If you understood what women are like. And dude, it was great. And so
lots of engagement.
What happened is that engagement blew up. And then I said, well, if you want an algorithm to really get excited, start responding and show that you actually care about the viewers.
Got it.
So I said, set aside the next 30 minutes and respond to every single person that you can.
Great advice.
He's responding to every single person. Part of it kind of insinuates another response. So we just went from I don't know the exact number. Let's say we had 100 comments.
Yeah.
We just doubled that into 200 comments.
Right.
TikTok's like, whoa. And then you've got people who see the comment replies. They come back to the piece of content.
Yep.
And now they're invested again. And so they get another round of views.
That's
and then
pulling the algorithm.
Then so we're kind of playing with the algorithm at that point. But we have a very controversial point. The music's the music's not doing a ton for the video. There's a little bit of engagement. There's a little bit of color on the screen. But it's good. A good hook, good context, and we're getting straight down to the point. And we're just at that point, we're gaming the algorithm. The next piece of content, very similar. Great hook, put the responsibility back on people. People don't like to have to admit that it's their fault.
Right.
That's the worst thing. So if you can get people in content to admit, oh, it's my fault for something, you have arguments, you have contents blowing up,
100%.
Dumpster fires happening,
Yep.
You've got polarization, and then you've just got this rise in views just by being polarizing, but while not being at the expense of your reputation.
Right.
So Keith did a very good job with that, and we did that, and I think we grew his TikTok following. I want to make sure that these numbers are accurate. I believe it was about over 12,000 more followers at the very least.
From that one video over
it went about two or three videos in the span of 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. The beneficial effects of going viral on TikTok.
Yep, and just to prove, we kept going past that, and we went on to Instagram. We were doing anywhere between 12, sometimes 30,000 views per video. And we were just able to keep cutting them through.
Amazing. Yeah. Great example. I mean, we've all heard of, Alex Hormozy as well. We know he spends a lot more on content marketing in terms of his team and his systems and processes and, equipment and all that good stuff than he does on advertising. And that actually is because it generates far more impressions across all of his channels, right? And the benefit he receives is worth it versus paid advertisements if he were to get the same amount of impressions. So you guys, our listeners, you may also know Taylor Welch. I used to work with Taylor as his content marketing guy and creative director at Traffic and Funnels back in the day, and was with him when he launched his podcast, Daily Mind Medicine. And that was the Daily Mindset podcast, very short form, 3 to 7 minutes per episode ish.
Yep.
And that started from zero. We launched it, YouTube clips, dropped it on social media as we shared it within the community. And that surpassed over 1 million downloads in, I want to say, 13 to 14 months.
Goodness gracious.
Or so. I have to double check my numbers on the exact, but that was really cool to be a part of. But I want to give you a quick breakdown of how we specifically really grew the structure of his content marketing. So as you know, Traffic and Funnels was a consultancy providing a lot of educational materials, right? And Taylor is such a master at creating content and educating people through that content that we had a plethora to use for either repurposing it as short forms, intentionally filming podcasts, YouTube long form, all that good stuff. But what I think was a really great piece to start with was the fact that Taylor actually and Traffic and Funnels had a lot of various lead magnets available. So we had a library on our website, trafficandfunnels.com. There was a product library that had like a bunch of free downloads, free cheat sheets, giveaway opt-ins, lead magnets of various sorts, even front-end products, pay $27 for an ads workshop or mid-ticket products, all kinds of things that he knew the market wanted and needed based on the clientele that he was working with at the time, who simply were entrepreneurs, similar to our listeners now, who wanted to grow their business. So a lot of opportunities to actually create leads through an opt-in exchange were present. And we got to have the opportunity to rotate through those all the time. So we decided, okay, well, how do we get people to actually land on my various landing pages and give me their email address in exchange for one of my PDFs around how to build an offer or how to build a sales team or a sales script or various operational tips and tricks to improve your efficiency, various things that are relevant to his audience. How do we actually get people to this multitude of free opt-ins, right? Well, we realized, okay, we can get those eyeballs through content marketing, through the various social media channels, through podcast, Daily Mind Medicine, in the show notes, quick little ads.
This was like, what, 2019 that you guys started?
I began at Traffic and Funnels 2019. Yep.
When did the podcast start?
Or it might have been 18. Podcast, I want to say, was early 2020 or late 2019. I got to double check my numbers. But so we essentially, I started there as like the sole creative producing ads. We were spending a lot on advertising. That was our primary bread and butter for, in the golden days of Facebook ads before iOS crashed everything. But I really began to focus as we built the team out to handle more of the creative production aspect. I began to focus on the content marketing side of, okay, let's produce regular podcasts, regular blog posts from those podcasts, separate value articles in addition to the podcast blogs. Let's cross-promote those on Facebook every week. Let's cross-promote the podcast on Facebook and Instagram and all the other platforms. Let's also build in a weekly or a bi-weekly nurture email. So we begin to really integrate all of these various platforms as a content machine regularly every day, but every couple of weeks we're sending emails, blogs, podcasts, we're going out weekly, social media posts regularly. And because of that, we had no shortage. So we were able to produce lots of content. And the key for us for actually monetizing this was introducing ads and call to actions in our captions, in our show notes, and giving people just the opportunity to upgrade their experience. If they liked the content that they listened to, whether that was short form or a podcast episode, they could go one level deeper by taking advantage of a free giveaway or a paid product even that was super congruent with whatever the topic was.
And so there's a ton of podcasts. Did you guys have to run a lot of ads to get people to actually listen to the actual episodes?
No.
Okay. Let's save the whole deep dive on all of the whole podcast. I'd love to dive into another episode.
That merits.
But what do you think was, if you could only attribute, everyone wants to know, there's a ton of podcasts out there today. There's so many. And for me, like the stuff with Keith, it was very polarizing and it was a good hook.
Yeah.
And we just kind of gamed it a little bit. What would you say that one spicy thing was that you did with DMM as a podcast that got that to blow up?
I would say it was purely Taylor already had a decently established audience, but number one is the value. The value was needed. There was kind of a gap in the marketplace. There wasn't really like a daily drip, quick short form of mindset training available to and relevant specifically to the entrepreneur market at that time that I knew of that was doing it as well as Taylor. And people knew it. He knew that, and Taylor knew that the market wanted it. And he was consistent, man. He's been going on it now for 3-4 years. On that podcast stream, basically.
So you guys basically blended a short form idea with a long form platform, which kind of when the market zigs, you want to zag. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's what he did. Podcasts were very long, sometimes very boring, and you guys just made something really short, sweet, to the point. But the thing that actually sticks out is that you figured out how to create the most amount of value in the least amount of time. think people think that there is like, oh, what's this perfect amount of time?
Right.
There's not really a perfect amount of time to talk about something
Yep.
for a certain amount of length. It's like, what works for you? How long does it take for you to get the words in your head that are value driven out of your mouth?
Yep.
How do you get and if you can skip right through the fluff, stuff like that, a good show will actually grow itself.
Absolutely. And he was so consistent with it. It's funny. I kept saying, Taylor, we need to plug in a microphone into your phone. These podcast episodes were recorded on his iPhone.
Voice memos. Oh, yeah. And then I took over the podcast, I was like, I tried to change the same thing and still couldn't do it. So
there were plosives in it. I mean, we had to run all kind of audio filtering, but he's like, you know what? You guys fix it. I'm just going to deliver the value consistently. And so that's one thing that I think a lot of barriers people hold up on waiting to take action before they have all the right gear. They'll invest a ton of money in a bunch of gear.
Momentum beats perfection.
100%, man. Just get it out there, and the result you can iterate over time. Obviously, and let the market give feedback. Even if it's like your first, second, third episode, let them give you feedback and guide the directions of your next topic. See what's relevant. See what's resonating with your content. You don't have to totally start afresh if it's not working right away. Just keep going and let the market kind of guide you. And that's funny because we're kind of tying into some of the other benefits down the line. But that was a little taste. We know these people have had success with content marketing. And
one other thing, if I might add.
Go ahead.
These people also have in junction is that the two things that we noticed between Taylor and Keith, they were already consistent with good content. I think a lot of people, they get so confused with the runway is they're like, I want my podcast to blow up right now, or I need this to explode right now. And it's like, you haven't really earned it. Like, all we did with Keith's content is we already took a really good message with somebody who was already really consistent, had been in the online space for
100%.
years. They had already known what made them different. And instead of going, oh, Jake needs to make me famous, I just repackaged something that was already good, that was already consistent, and made it into something a little bit more well packaged and formatted. You guys did the exact same thing with someone like Taylor, who's naturally a writer. You just turned it into a speaking format, into a short form format, put it into a podcast, and then that became unique.
Yep.
It made them unique, but they were already consistent, and what they already did consistently was proven to already be interesting to the viewer.
And that's what I love about content marketing is that especially when you partner alongside with a creator who's naturally gifted as a creator, you can take what they produce in those pillar pieces of content and reproduce it, repurpose it in so many different ways to achieve that omnipresent effect that begins to act as if there are a bunch of fishing lines out there in the market for you, all pulling leads and eyeballs and attention to your offers, to your sales pages simultaneously, right? And there's ways that you can go about building tracking to know which platform is giving me the most traffic, the most highest quality traffic, what type of opt-ins they're actually acting with from various platforms. And we're going to dive more into that here in a minute, but I love it. I love it.
It's great.
Cool. So benefit, you want to hit these benefits? So first benefit.
Oh, these are so fun, man.
Yeah.
So I actually love this one. The benefits basically like, how does content benefit your sales? How does it like flow with making you money? People are like, legacy is great, but how does it actually make you money? It's interesting because I started in sales. I won't go too deep into the story, but I did sales for like 9 months, and just for numbers and are numbers helpful, or do we just not need them? What do you think? Do we need numbers? No?
Rough ballpark.
Rough ballpark, yeah. Multiple 7 figures in sales in 9 months generated revenue. And I would attribute a lot of that to, we had a Facebook group that we used for the company we worked with. The company only had advertisements. We had 0 organic marketing, only advertisements. So there wasn't a lot of marketing that was building trust with the audience consistently for me as the salesperson.
Right.
So what we were often encouraged to do was to build our own brands inside of these groups. And so what I took to the most was actually creating videos for like tailored to this group, value-driven stuff that was original, well thought through.
Yeah.
It was already material that we had. It was just processed a little bit differently, and then I posted. But most of the guys on my team weren't willing to do that. They'd do it maybe 2 or 3 times, and then they'd stop.
Was it live, or did you pre-record it?
It was a mix. I kind of averaged about 1 live a week, and then I would create different pieces of content throughout the week. Sometimes I'd send them to people, and if that did well, I'd put it in the group. But I got real vulnerable. I got transparent. Like I wrecked my Tesla one time and put that in the group, and it was just, that blew up. And then what it ended up doing is that content, I ended up putting that into our emails. I put it into like everything that was custom for me.
Right.
I integrated it into our emails, my messages, in my DMs, and in my Facebook group. And when I didn't even realize at the time that organic marketing was so powerful because it does a multitude of different things for you. And this is how you should think about content, because when you're creating content, it ultimately needs to lead your buyer down the buying journey to some way. So a couple different things that it did that I noticed is that it actually, sometimes it did the conversion, not always, but oftentimes organic marketing did a great job of nurturing.
100%.
It built trust. And what was most fun to me is it kind of built like this kind of celebrity status. For whatever reason, when we record stuff, people just instantly think highly of you. I don't know why. I think we're starting to move out of that now that TikTok's kind of blown up and we're all just normal influencers with iPhones and stuff. So I think that we're moving out of that space. But what it did is people got on the phone. They were like, man, I've seen you be consistent. I've seen how you think. I relate to you. I relate to this story. And they'd get on the phone and they'd be far easier to close versus they've never heard of me. They've seen some other people's stuff and they're on the phone with me. It's a little bit weird. So organic marketing. And lastly, like on the nurture side, so it's really helpful for the calls. But also when somebody sees an ad from you and they've seen your organic, or if they have seen your organic for a while and then they see an ad, they're way more likely to click on it. They're way more likely to purchase because they already know that you're legit and they know how to find you. It's like they kind of have your address.
Yep.
You can get your reputation can be very easily tarnished online with whatever you say. So, and then the counterbalance is that people will also find your ads and then they'll go check your page to see if you're actually legit.
Exactly.
If you see an ad for a random company and they have no organic content, you're like, dude, they probably just started yesterday.
And the interesting thing, like that, the Facebook group that you were working within, a lot of those people who were within the group probably came off of the back of an ad.
Right. I did too.
And so a lot of the attention that you were being able to take advantage of was from paid advertising. But a lot of times it would just like these leads these eyeballs would come into the platform and just fall flat, right? But then you could then reactivate them through various organic platforms, like one of your videos that kind of acts almost like a evergreen little salesman inside that group, or on your page, on your feed, that always goes and works for you. And then, like you said, when the client actually, they build trust with you, that you earn that know, like, and trust factor, and then they get to jump on a call, they already naturally feel like they know you. And then, like you said, it converts a lot quicker. The call just is a lot more natural.
So much more fun, man. You don't have to do all this like weird salesman work, which is why people have to invent all of these tactics for how do you do sales and how do you keep people on the phone longer. It's like, well, if you had more trust right off the bat, or you had good marketing, because marketing sales go right hand in hand, and paid ads and sales usually go hand in hand, but then the organic side actually creates long-term sustainability.
Yep. It really bolsters the whole marketing approach. And so the benefit in a concise way is that content marketing, it increases the marketing efficiency ratio, and it increases your paid ad efficiency. So if you're already purchasing ads, you're already advertising, receiving a lot of inbound traffic from your ads, well, you're going to get a higher conversion rate overall from as a percentage wise if you have organic going strategically that perfectly pairs with that versus if you don't. So, and marketing efficiency ratio is kind of like one of those North Star metrics in marketing where it's kind of all of the general revenue that you're earning divided by your spend. So you're factoring in your marketing spend, ad spend, and then it's like, okay, if you have organic marketing, you're going to become naturally, your marketing efficiency ratio will go up. So if it's $30,000 revenue one month and you spend 10 grand, then that's a 3. 30 divided by 10 grand is 3. Your marketing ratio is 3. It's going to go even higher if you have organic.
Yep.
So that's a cool benefit. And I love the stories and the examples you gave there. Okay. Another benefit too is like here it is. It builds and nurtures its own unpaid audience. So yes, if you do organic, you're taking advantage of a lot of the paid viewers that you already have, and you're going to help make them more efficient. But it's also now these pieces of video and content that you're putting out there in the world are going to begin to build on themselves and actually attract new people and build a new audience on that platform that you didn't have to pay for.
Right.
And that's evidence with what your story with Keith Yackey. And we saw this a lot with Traffic and Funnels. The podcast would begin to attract new people and say, oh, I came across you through the podcast and now I'm venturing into your product library. I didn't even know you taught about offer building, or I didn't know you taught about, how to build a sales team. This is great. So it really begins to attract its own.
It does so much legwork for you, man. We used to live in a time where we'd have to. I'm speaking as like someone who's like 22 years old, so I didn't quite live in the era. But you have people where it just used to be you had to go door to door, you had to do this and that. Now your content, like I had people watch the same video, 7-minute video long, They were watching it 6 months even after I left the company. It was still people going, oh my gosh, thank you so much for making this piece of content. You're doing all of this work where people don't have to talk to you directly. They can just listen to you, get your thoughts, process it, determine if they like you or not, move on and keep going. We're living in this culture now where it's like quality of content has to be so high. Who you listen to has to be so valuable. So people are very, very picky and petty with who they listen to and who they take advice from. So if you don't have content, you're basically relying on like events and a couple paid ads to do all the work for you, which is great. But what happens when Facebook breaks? If Facebook breaks, you don't even have a business. I know people, literally Facebook stopped and they did not have a business. They went from 50 grand a month to zero. They were like, we have no client acquisition systems. They had no levers to pull. They had nothing organic. And unless your name's Andrew Tate and you don't have any access to any platforms anymore, you're kind of screwed. But even in the Andrew Tate situation, so much organic content still can't get them off the internet. Like it's a perfect example. We don't have to go into reputation or anything like that or who he is, any of that stuff. But it's interesting that someone like him was able to come onto the internet, get so famous, even get canceled and left from every single platform completely organically. I've never seen a paid ad from Andrew Tate ever. And the dude can sell whatever he wants. All the time. And it'll sell right out immediately just from having influence. Now that's a rarity. But there are a lot of things that are very interesting about Andrew Tate with the polarization, original message, consistency. There's a lot. Most people are like, I want content to work tomorrow. It's like, it's not always going to work that way, but it protects you in the long term.
A few things you mentioned there I want to drill into. So there's a lot of concentration risk if you're only on one platform. Like you said, if you're only advertising on Facebook and Facebook changes a rule or the privacy features go away or prohibit you from targeting as you used to target, then hey, your business is now shot. But if you have content marketing spread omnipresently, right, against a bunch of platforms, yes, some of them might be platforms that you don't own, like YouTube or Facebook. You don't actually own those platforms. And yes, those platforms have the right to change things, which might screw up that part of your business, your cash flow, your lead gen. But if you're spread across a bunch, then you have that concentration risk lowered.
100%.
And you can then begin to have a greater chance to build your own owned assets and platform, like your newsletter, like your blog and your website traffic. Those can't be taken away from you because you own those things. And so that's why we love to have the omnipresence with content marketing on social media, on your podcast, to actually lead people to build that newsletter for our listeners to then generate that impact, because that's what we're here for. We want to equip entrepreneurs and experts to grow their businesses through the vehicle of content marketing, through our strategies, through the ways we've seen it work, providing knowledge and framework structure, but also the legwork of like we can actually support our listeners by doing the work for them as well, if that's something they're interested in.
Which is interesting because you brought up one thing that is a very prevalent problem that a lot of people forget about is when Vine blew up. You remember that? Vine became this big thing. Dude, there was all these big creators that if they couldn't figure out how to get from, if it was Vine to YouTube or Vine to Instagram, they died. They did not make it because they were not diversified at all. They just had everything on Vine. And now we live in a day and age, you can have your content literally everywhere at all times. Like
with actually minimal different work. Like
very minimal
If you just put the intention into creating that pillar piece of content, it can be repurposed. As long as it's a great video. Let's say you're primarily a YouTuber. You can take that and then repurpose one of the shorts on Instagram, but wait till you see if it's been a really high performing short on YouTube. Okay, great. Let's repurpose it on Instagram. And in a lot of different ways, we can talk about that.
And different platforms respond differently to different pieces of content. TikTok likes more raw, Instagram's more produced, so on and so forth. So, and that kind of leads us into the next piece is like the way that content works now is so unique compared to how it was even 4 years ago. There's so much that you can do to leverage even just one single piece of content. A lot of people have been I feel like radio is the best example. People make these long radio shows. Most people don't listen to the radio as much anymore. Some people.
My father-in-law loves the radio.
I bet
he's from the golden days of radio.
100%. But
Roger.
A lot of people are creating content and they're doing all this work, but they're not getting the most yield out of it. Which is exactly what a Keith Yackey was doing. Another client that we could talk about at some point was Garrett White. Which I'll go into that for a second, then it'll let you talk into some of the ways that you diversify content so interestingly. So I'd love to dive into that for a second. But with Garrett White, to go down that for a second, Garrett was creating tons of lives. He created a documentary that was a paid ad documentary type of thing, had all this stuff. didn't really have an organic presence though. There were a couple of YouTube videos. They were only from live events. They didn't really have it. There was a couple live streams on Instagram, a couple things on Facebook, and they would get kind of minimal engagement, anywhere between 3 to like 13,000 views of video. We were like, okay, cool. And most of the time it was 3 to 4,000 views. And he had about 52,000 followers, well known in the space, very wealthy, had all the connections. But if he turned off ads, there wasn't a massive organic following to really bolster that up, especially on the video platforms. Again, very talented writer, somebody who had a big email list, had access on Facebook, wasn't super active on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We took over some of his stuff. And within about, even on the first view, we hit 30,000 within the first time we took one of his videos.
Nice.
We just kind of figured, what is your messaging? How does that need to look? How does it need to feel? Put on social, pissed off the world, that blew up.
Yeah.
And we just repackaged something that he'd already done.
Exactly.
And we got, within a couple months, we were hitting tons of views.
And that's the power of someone like you and taking that expertise and of having a talented video editor to identify and select the right piece of content, package it in such of a way that was going to get max views and engagement based on your knowledge of who the client is, who their market is, who their audience is, so that you know how to phrase. That's the whole core pillar of marketing, is knowing your audience. So all of those things, and obviously there's AI tools and things nowadays to speed up the process, to actually aid in the efficiency and the creative piece. And because of that, all that together, you got the massive views. Absolutely love it.
But what are some of the ways that people are creating these long form pieces of content? What are some of the ways that people can take their content and repurpose it? There's probably plenty of people that are, maybe this is new information to them.
Yep.
People are creating sometimes YouTube long form, sometimes they're creating podcasts, sometimes it is a radio show. I want you to talk about everything. Like, if you have one long form piece of content, what are all of the ways that people could be leveraging that can go into social media nowadays in 2023?
One of the most common ways is starting with that pillar piece of content. So Taylor, for example, there were so many paid product modules that he delivered trainings on, or a long form podcast episode that he would talk about a topic with a guest, or go live within a free Facebook group that he could deliver, or maybe it was a webinar. Whatever that long form piece of content was, we could take it, segment it, split that into a podcast by chopping it up as either a segment or a full episode with an intro, outro, maybe an ad in the middle. So obviously taking that, putting it into a long form, we can then repurpose as a blog. We can then chop up as various pieces of micro content to get eyeballs back to the blog, back to the podcast.
What is micro content exactly?
Short form video content, which is used, usually sub 60 seconds, sub 90 seconds on social platforms like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Vertical usually has captions, maybe some music, some B-roll, opening with a hook, making sure it's edited and delivers value, that whatever the messaging is super congruent with what the thumbnail is as well. But all of that, it's just really what it takes is a consistent delivery of long form content. And sometimes you already have an archive built up as an entrepreneur that you can come alongside a creative team, give them access to, and they can begin building the content machine for you. Or if there's not so much, you can then commit to filming weekly or bi-weekly or monthly and delivering those core pieces of pillar content, maybe 2 to 3 episodes, longer form, 4 or 5 per month. That's all we need, right? That's all you might need. And from there, you could repurpose it. Now, the big question that I'm hearing a lot today too is quality versus quantity.
Oh yeah.
So do you want to just pump out content as short form videos just to pump out content?
Yep.
Or is it better to actually wait and focus a little bit more on the quality? What's your take on that, Jake?
It's really interesting because I've gone back and forth multiple times, and I'm actually going through a book right now by Derrick Eves. One of the things he talks about is that this actually varies by creator. There's different creators that he's close with. This guy has all the credibility in the world. He couldn't ask for somebody better. There are some creators that only put out content once per month, and they get millions of views, make tons of money. Then there's other people that post. WWE actually posts, I think anywhere between 12 to 20 different, it's 40 to 50 videos a day.
Yeah.
So quantity can be helpful. Quality can also be helpful.
Yep.
Here's the big thing that I noticed though. Most creators, if I had to make a guess, I'd say 95% of creators are not making enough content to be worth putting out 2 pieces of content per day. So you have someone like Gary Vee that talks to somebody who makes $60,000 a year. and says, hey, you need to be putting out 2 pieces of content
Every
per day,
second you need to post.
it's going to burn you out. You're never going to sleep. You're not going to have a marriage.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be happy with your life or your business. And by the time that you do that, you're going to be like, my content only has 300 views on it. And you wonder why. It's because you didn't really think about the quality. You didn't think about the messaging. So instead of focusing on quality or quantity, we actually need to go back one step and go, what is the mission? How am I unique? What makes my message different? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know a lot of creators personally that create content, but they are only doing it because they saw someone else do it, and there's nothing original about what they're doing. And if they post 2 times a day or even once a day, it doesn't matter because what they're doing is just like everybody else's stuff.
And it's going to lead to burnout. Without that vision,
100%.
You're going to come across one barrier or hiccup in life, and you're like, I'm done. I'm not seeing the result that I wanted. Okay, what's the purpose of continuing on, right? So you got to have that mission and vision.
Yep.
Also, I love what you're saying too. It's like you got to know yourself. So that's what I'm hearing you say as well. Like everybody's a little bit different. You said some cases a daily thing might work. Maybe it's a real estate investment. You know, I'm talking about the interest rates changing every single day. Let's do a quick update on the market for you today. Or a lot of people, which I say more creators actually are more so personality driven, expertise driven, not on a specific daily topic maybe, but larger, broader topics. And so that may require a little bit more time investment on the planning side and the publication, the production side. That maybe that only allows you to post once every 2 weeks as a YouTuber or something like that. We know that takes a lot more time and intention to produce something like that. Yep. And that's okay. It's just really depending on who is your audience, what do they expect from you, and what is your unique expertise that you can deliver. Some people have that really like perfectionist mindset where it's like, I don't want to just throw everything out there every day. And that's okay, because ultimately we've found if you're doing a lot of low quality content regularly on short form that doesn't necessarily resonate with the audience, all that's doing is contributing to the noise out there today. There's so many things, more than ever before, vying for our audience's attention. People are actually beginning to become more selective on who they follow. There's a lot of people who will unfollow you if you're not posting things that people really value hearing. So I would actually encourage, let's focus more on quality first and then begin to ramp up quantity once we find that people are actually resonating.
Right, because a lot of agencies out there nowadays are like, well, you can create all your content in 1 hour per month. It's like, and then I go to their pages and I look at it, and there's all this beautiful content with like 4 likes for 6 months straight. If that's your content for 6 months, it's probably not your editing. If you are getting 4 likes per post for 6 months straight, I guarantee it is not your editing.
Yep.
It is probably something that you're saying that's not original. Because what I can tell you this is good content will cut through the noise.
Yes.
At least past 4 likes.
Yep.
At least like 20. A lot of people are like, well, I'll just do it in 1 hour per month.
Yeah.
What I know is I've been around these people. I've been around Hormozy. I've seen the people who work with Gary Vee. I've studied these people. These people that are putting out 2 times of content per day, they have a videographer following them around. They got to make a good amount of money. They are shooting content at least 10 to 30 hours per week. And that doesn't even include the content that's pullable or not. And when you're doing everything that's scripted,
selectable for a short form.
Yeah. And there's people that have tried to, there's a lot of agencies that will even script everything for you too. And they'll say, well, this is what you got to say. And I saw business owners that were making content about dating advice. And I was like, dude, this is making you look like a douche online. Cause this isn't even
You're 18 years old and you're giving dating advice.
Right. And it's in the wrong, they weren't 18, but it's like, man, you're damaging your reputation. You're out of your niche. You're getting the wrong followers. You're getting engagement just to get engagement versus focusing in on your messaging, what makes you different. Yeah. And we'll talk in a different episode about how to be original, how to build your own message and communicate stuff like that. But your message has to be interesting at the end of the day.
Yep.
And so if that is 3 videos per week, I recommend if you can get daily Monday through Friday, that's what I recommend as a baseline. Like we've said before, momentum is better than perfection.
Yep. And you mentioned like some agencies publishing 6 months worth of content, creating it, and it all having like 4 likes, right?
Sure.
And that you might look and examine at the feed, and everything might look exactly the same. And that sometimes too, we're finding that platforms prefer mixtures of modalities of content.
Or buckets. They would call them buckets. You can have different buckets of content that you work with.
And that could be a term also used for topics that you might on the internal side before it goes live. But we're talking, sometimes you need to mix it with a carousel graphic post, then follow it by a reel, then maybe just a text only post instead of just one only only one form of modality over and over and over again. Now, that's where analytics and testing comes into play, where okay, and we know Facebook and Instagram separate reels from post types. So you can analyze the metrics separately. Are my reels performing? Are my posts performing? What's the split of posts to reels that I'm posting? Do I need to change that? Is the algorithm deprioritizing those? Is my audience not preferring that type? So that's where analytics comes in. But
Totally.
let's just summarize the last couple of benefits, that because we've kind of talked about them but haven't summarized them, and then we'll move on. Content marketing has a cumulative growth effect, so it exhibits compounding effect over time, kind of like a little salesman working for you. Once you publish it, it's out there, always working for you. Someone might watch it a year from now, click the link in your description that leads to your booking page, and decide to book with you because that video earned their trust.
Right.
It was solving the problem that they had at that time, and they searched for something. Make sure YouTubers keep doing this very searchable, taggable types of content topics so that it is found easily. But then, the content worked for you. Cumulative growth. And then the next benefit we haven't yet covered: intentionally planning and filming your content marketing. Just a few long form per month, it can be repurposed into dozens of pieces of content. And so we talked about how we repurpose it: podcast, YouTube, short form. What I forgot to mention actually was the newsletter piece. So you might have a blog.
About blogs as well?
Yeah. You might have a blog. You might have a podcast, all that stuff. You can feature that on your newsletter once a month as here's what you may have missed, or here's the top trending, my latest article. Check it out. We were in a cadence of once per week with our blog at Traffic and Funnels that I was running. And this was really cool because every blog was always super congruent with a certain offer that we were promoting at the time. Mm-hmm. We always included a product upgrade at the bottom. So within the copy of the blog, linking to one of the landing pages to download the free product upgrade, or maybe it was a paid product upgrade. Download my masterclass in this. And we would always add UTM links inside, UTM codes inside the link. So when people click it and it leads them off page in a new tab, basically the UTM link will tell whenever someone opts into that form on that page, that form will scrape the invisible field being the URL of the UTM code and say, okay, we kept a very consistent naming convention with our UTM codes saying, all right, this form download, form submission included a viewer who read our blog, so from trafficandfunnels.com,
right. And
the medium was blog, and the term was, content marketing team, and these various fields, you could name them very specifically, and the actual down to the level of what blog title it was that actually led them to download that upgrade.
And just for simplistic talk, UTM would basically be a place. It's basically like a little link you can put in. So when someone clicks on something, they know where that traffic or that consumer came from.
Yep.
So you can put a UTM link in your Instagram bio that leads you to a product, and that way on the back end you can just check, where did this person come from? And be like, oh, they came from Instagram.
Exactly.
That's basically what a UTM is, right?
And so as we went omnipresently, we embedded UTM links on every single channel. So we knew from Google Analytics could read, all right, this many people hit my website who came from Instagram, from Facebook, from YouTube. This many people came to my sales page through the blog post, through my podcast, link in the description or the show notes. And we oftentimes, when you add these UTM codes, it makes a link look pretty bad, right? Like really long form, all these jumbled letters and stuff. You can run them through a quick, well, if you hyperlink it, then it's great because no one sees it. But you can run it through a link shortener too, like Bitly or something like that. We had a pretty links. We had a branded link shortener. So that was really cool. But anyways, that was really, that's one of our benefits is just repurposing. Just a little bit of effort in the creating the pillar pieces can then be repurposed into so many things that can then be tracked down the line that can benefit you way down the line.
And I'll just go through a quick run through of what that could actually look like practically for somebody. Let's say you have a podcast. You could take a podcast, if it's really well put together, you could put that into a video format, cut it up, put it on YouTube. You could take some of the best clips, some of the most polarizing, most controversial types of clips, and put those on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, Twitter, every single platform they can take it. You could put those little clips on there. So that's the short form side. And what you're saying is you could also take the podcast, turn it into a relevant blog. Then you could embed just means put a little podcast or a link to your podcast inside of this blog. And the blog is basically just outlining what's in the podcast. And then people have to go to the podcast, listen to the whole thing. And then that podcast can also get turned into an email to get sent to your email list. Yep. So now the people that are on your email list are getting cross-pollinated with what's on your website. The people that naturally go to your website through SEO now get to find out about your organic marketing. And if you put in little ads in your podcast, people that come to your podcast or just listen to your podcast, oh, I can go read the blog. I can just read the blog version, or I can join the email list and get the other piece, or I can be listening to the podcast. And they're like, well, what are the best clips? I don't want to have to listen to the whole podcast. Well, guess what? They're on Instagram. So now you can go to Instagram and you can go watch your favorite moments of that podcast on whatever site you want to. So it really like cross-pollinates, create this moat to where you can reach any type of person basically with one piece of content. Yep. You made one podcast that went on one platform and you left it. If you're not putting it on all these other platforms, like all we did for some of our clients,
you're leaving out opportunity on the table.
100%. And for some of our clients, we just took a podcast that was already there, maybe 500 listens, put on multiple platforms, and guess what? We just got 100,000 free views in a month.
Yeah, you might as well put them there if you've got the content.
Right.
You've got the means. Now, oftentimes people just don't have the means or the skill set. They have to find somebody who's going to be a full-time person to manage all these platforms for them, to have the skill and the ability to understand the brand, understand the marketing, and do it with excellence. That's a whole process in and of itself. And sometimes people have big in-house teams for that. Other people turn to an agency partner to run that for them.
Yep.
So we got benefit number 5. What is that?
Building new relationships and unexpected opportunities with content marketing.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is more geared towards you get actual influence when you actually build a brand.
Yeah.
You get more affinity with different brands. It opens you up for sponsorships. I actually had a client one time tell me, they were like, yeah, so I gained like 40,000 followers with you in like working with us. We gained 40,000 followers. I went to a hotel and they were like, oh yeah, we found you on Instagram. We already upgraded your room for you. Wow. He's like, man, it's great being famous. He's like, this is great. Like you just kind of get, that doesn't happen all the time, but having influence gets you certain perks that you wouldn't normally have.
And so like, even if you're starting small, these relationships can be hugely beneficial to business. You might not necessarily, when you launch a podcast, get thousands of downloads in your first month.
Right.
But what you can do is have a guest on your podcast just who actually they actually may become a client of yours. You never know. You may say, well, if you're a YouTube expert and you have a guest who does their own channel, blah, 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 you can have them on and say, oh, by the way, how is your YouTube doing? And they're like, oh, good. I'm spending a lot of time editing it myself right now. They may be interested in your service as a YouTube agency partner down the line.
Yep.
And they later on and I've seen this happen with Taylor, just inviting guests or being a guest is then being invited to an event. Mm-hmm. to speak. And then there's a whole new opportunity of exposure given right there just from that little relationship from the podcast. So there's a lot of really additional benefits that the relationships yield that oftentimes are even better than just the amount of views or downloads or people just going to your website.
100%.
Yep. I always love that. All right, here's a cool benefit too. Benefit 6 is the content in your content marketing, whether it's your podcast, blog, social posts, you can repurpose that to then help your clients. Let's say you are an ad agency who not only do you provide a service, but you provide a consulting offer to help people learn in their own companies how to run better ads, how to think about advertising better, assist their marketing departments. You can provide trainings on this through your content marketing and then save it. We often find people save their content in like a table, kind of like a pot of gold sort of situation, maybe a table in Google Sheets, or we use Notion. You can then link that out and say, here's a quick resource to your client success team. Shoot this video over whenever someone asks you that question, right? You can also do that for your sales team. If there are certain objections that are being asked regularly on sales calls, and you have a piece of content floating out there that is addressing directly that objection, your sales team can shoot that over via an email and just pre-frame a call and improve that conversion rate. So there's a lot of great ways to repurpose and utilize content very practically from client success and sales.
Ooh, which is really good. We used to have we had a piece of content back in the day that we used to send to all of our prospects. Our prospects would be like, I just heard about this new opportunity that you guys are offering, like you can make money with. I don't know if I should do it. Like I've never heard about it. And so we actually, it's funny because you were in the conjunction company that worked with ours in the podcast, the Daily My Medicine podcast was actually, it was mindset training to fix the stuff that was going on in the teams. It was mindset training in terms of just the objections that a lot of people had. And so you guys actually end up engineering the podcast for overcoming objections. And the podcast was ultimately teaching people how to think. A lot of people give away so much of the information in their podcast for free. They don't always have clients that need them anymore. They don't need their help because you've already given all the information away. Rather, if you can teach people how to think and come at it from different angles and perspectives, you can actually change a person's life. A question that someone actually asked Alex Hormozy the other day is they just straight up were like, you teach a lot of people how to build big businesses, but you got to teach people how to think. And that's a big piece of what people are missing in a lot of their podcasts is they don't know how to think. And so if you can teach people how to think and pre-frame them in your words, pre-frame them to where when they get on the call with you, maybe they're ready to go, or they're more likely to align with how your values and principles already work and how they work together. And that would lead to people getting on the phone and they're like fired up when they get on this call.
Oh yeah.
Because the mindset is already there. You're not having to fix this mindset and fix all this junk with somebody because your content marketing already did the work for you.
Absolutely. It works on your behalf to improve and let people know you and like you and trust you. I mean, that kind of weaves through every one of these benefits that we've covered. It's just such a beneficial thing to do. And it really leads to our final benefit, which is when you do content marketing, it engineers an environment for you as a creator that almost forces you to grow. And it forces yourself to hold yourself accountable. If you've made a commitment to releasing a weekly podcast or a YouTube video once a week, that's going to require you to study. It's going to require you to learn your stuff and actually display that you know what you're talking about as an expert. And you're going to then be able to get better results for the people you're helping because you're holding yourself accountable with that commitment. And as you do that, your business will naturally grow because of all these other benefits we've covered. Content is out there omnipresently working on your behalf.
Yep, 100%.
So does content marketing work in 2023? Kind of the question we were setting out to answer. Yes, it absolutely does. And there's a lot of ways to do it. And one of the things too that we do want to mention is every brand is different. It all comes down to you have to know who you're working with, who you're communicating with, because the strategy is going to be a little different each time. It's not always going to be post 5 times a week with a reel. It may be post 2 or 3 times with a higher quality type reel that is actually pulling the best of your knowledge, that is keeping the quality high, and bypass a few posts per week so long as you're getting out there the right messaging. And then the different platforms, some people are very heavy on Twitter that we work with. Some people are very heavy on YouTube and maybe very low on LinkedIn or very high on TikTok. And so it's all about knowing those platforms, who primarily are on the platforms, who are the demographics, what are their interests, what are their pain, and what is the definition of that customer profile so that the content that's created can be done so in a way that is effective.
100%.
Yep. So landing this plane, wrapping up this episode, we hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, this is only the first. We're going to talk about a lot of things related to content marketing and helping you grow in your business.
Yep. And with this being our first episode, we'd love to hear some honest reviews. If you wouldn't mind doing us a favor, it would be super dope if you could rate the show, even if you just leave like a 2-star or a 5-star. That'd be cool. And then we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on different platforms. So if you want to just message us and be like, hey, we love this podcast, or you can even message us questions. I have a lot of people that text me and they're just like, hey, I have questions about this. Text us information and maybe we'll make some content about it in the future. So we hope you guys enjoyed and we will see you guys on the next one.
Yep. Feedback is a breakfast of champions. We want it. We love it. We welcome it. Cool. Next episode, we're going to talk about how to research and plan content topics.
We'll see you guys on that one.
See ya.